A major legal victory for President-elect Donald Trump that will have implications for all future presidents.
Yeah, Special Counsel Jack Smith has dropped the charges now against Mr. Trump pertaining to the January 6th riots for mishandling confidential documents. Joining us this morning to help us understand why this happened, what exactly it means, is CUNY Constitutional Law professor Natalie Gomez-Valez. So great to see you once again, Natalie. Thank you for being here.
Good morning. Great to be here.
So there was so much talked about, right, when it came to this case. And then President-elect Trump won the election. So a lot of people assumed that some of these cases would be dropped. You know, what was your take on what the announcement was on these charges being dismissed?
Jack Smith's charges being dismissed?
Yeah.
Well, you know, it was surprising only if you were surprised that Trump won the election. There were many observers who said that if the president won the election, that likely these charges would be dismissed. But it's important to note that the charges are not being dismissed because of the merits of the cases. The charges are being dismissed because of a Department of Justice, Office of Legal Counsel memo that was based on a series of earlier memos that said basically a sitting president cannot be prosecuted. And that's for reasons involving separation of powers, not about the merits of the matters. And so Jack Smith just, moved to dismiss, and it was accepted in the January 6th riot case, the charges for that reason, not because of the merits of either of those cases.
I mean, could they have waited until after he served his full term?
Well, it's interesting. Smith dismissed the charges without prejudice. So technically, that means those cases could be revived. But as a practical matter, it's highly unlikely that they would be revived. I mean,
so I guess when you
look all the functions, yeah.
When you look at that, then, right, and you're saying they may possibly not be revived. What does that have the decision on other cases, right? Say the New York hush money case, where Trump is actually awaiting sentencing right now. How do you see that playing out with this decision being made on the Jack Smith front?
I think that's one of the more interesting and difficult cases, right? Because unlike the federal cases, where it's the Department of Justice, it's federal law, it's separation of powers with respect to federal law, the state cases, New York State is a separate state sovereign. It is not a situation where there's a prosecution, only there's a conviction on 34 counts of, falsifying business records, and the question is sentencing, and it's under purely state law. So the OLC memo, those restrictions don't technically apply. So on the one hand, if you're someone who believes in the rule of law, if you're someone who believes that, someone is convicted of charges, they should be sent like anybody else, they should be held accountable.
So you're saying because on the federal side they cannot do that to a sitting president, on the state side of things they can.
Right. We live in it's a federalist structure in government where states are sovereigns, especially with respect to enforcement of police powers and criminal laws. And so the pardon power, for example, doesn't apply to the New York State, the state cases. And some of the restrictions federally don't apply. However, Judge Merchan, I think, is in a difficult position because of the practical implications of this, right? Yeah. The OLC memos, the rationales that they give for not prosecuting a president federally may have some practical implications here, too. Yes. So he's in a tough position, I think.
Yeah, so curious, though, does this decision then undermine the role of the special counsel to investigate possible presidential criminality?
That's an interesting question, right? Because in the documents case, the lower court had dismissed it, saying that the special counsel was not improperly, appointed, et cetera. And that was on appeal. Now, that appeal is dismissed. That case is that dismissal stands. However, there's no decision on that question of the special counsel. And so far, the law has said that that's perfectly fine. But it's this open question among many open questions around these cases. This is all unprecedented.
Yeah.
Yep. There's the word. I was waiting for you to bring it up.
It raises concerns for the rule of law.
Yeah, certainly. Natalie, we're out of time, but great to see you as always. Appreciate you.
Same here.
Have a great Thanksgiving.
You too.